He laughed while I screamed. "Sloan, it's not a big deal," my stepdad said over the phone, voice slurred with whiskey. "I sold the cabin. Done. Debt's gone." My breath caught. My mountain cabin. The one my late mother left me in her will. The one I'd restored board by board. The only place that ever felt like home. "You sold it," I whispered. He chuckled. "It's just wood and walls. I needed the money." The room spun. I stared at the framed photo of Mom on my desk. Her smiling in front of that cabin, sunlight on her hair. That smile felt like a ghost now. He kept laughing until I said quietly, "You shouldn't have done that." His voice faltered. "What do you mean?" "Because you didn't sell it," I said. "You just made your last mistake. There's something sacred about a place your mother built with her own hands. For me, that place was the mountain cabin. Nestled in the heart of Blue Ridge Valley, surrounded by pine and silence, it wasn't just wood and stone. It was a memory carved into the earth. My mother, Marlene, built it after escaping her first marriage. After escaping him, Gary, the man who would later become my stepfather. I was 10 when she started building it. She worked double shifts as a nurse, spent weekends staining wood, hammering nails until her palms blistered. When I complained about the cold, she'd smile and say, "Freedom has no heating, baby. But it's warm in here," tapping her chest. After she died, the cabin became my refuge. A piece of her strength I could still touch. I spent every winter there, reading her old journals by the fire, restoring the floors, fixing the pipes. Every board smelled like pine and coffee. Every window held her reflection. Gary was never part of that world. He hated the cabin. Too quiet, too far from the casinos he loved. But after Mom's death, he somehow inserted himself into everything. He handled the paperwork, the bills, and the estate. I was 23 then, too trusting, too lost in grief to see what he was doing. 4 years, I paid the property taxes myself, believing I was keeping Mom's dream alive. Gary would text once a year. "Got it handled, kiddo. You're an angel." I believed him. Until that phone call. It came on a Friday afternoon. I was at work, balancing invoices when my phone buzzed. His name flashed on the screen. I hadn't heard from him in months. "Hey, kiddo," he said, voice slurred, cheerful. "Good news. You're debt-free." I frowned. "What are you talking about?" "I sold the cabin," he said, laughing. "Used the money to clear my tab with some friends. Win-win." For a second the world went silent. Just the sound of my heartbeat in my ears. "You what?" I whispered. "Relax," he chuckled. "It's just a cabin. You can buy another one someday." That's when something in me snapped. My hands went cold, my throat tight. "You had no right," I said, voice trembling. He snorted. "You think you still owned it? You signed the transfer ages ago." "I never signed anything," I hissed. He laughed again. "Well, then I guess someone else did." Blick. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, my reflection in the dark screen. Pale, shaking, furious. Then I grabbed my keys, threw on a coat, and drove straight to the mountains. The road was wet from rain, headlights cutting through mist. My chest burned with questions and rage. But nothing could have prepared me for what I saw when I turned up that dirt driveway. There were trucks outside, men unloading furniture, and a stranger standing on my porch. The tires crunched over gravel as I pulled up to the cabin, rain misting over the windshield. The place I'd loved since childhood looked wrong, cold, invasive, stripped of soul. 2 pickup trucks sat in the muddy yard, tailgates open, boxes stacked high. Furniture, my mother's furniture, was being carried out like junk. "Hey!" I shouted, slamming my car door. My boots sank into wet mud. "What are you doing?" One of the men barely looked at me. "We got orders to clear the place." "From who?" He pointed toward the porch. A tall man in his 40s stood there, clipboard in hand, wearing a raincoat and the smug expression of someone who thought he was in the right. "I'm the new owner," he said flatly. "You must be Sloan." The words hit like a slap. Owner. Well, this cabin is mine. He frowned, then held out a document wrapped in a plastic sleeve. I bought it last week. Bill of sale signed by you and notarized. I stared at the papers, my pulse pounding. My signature scrawled across the bottom. The same loop, the same slant, but it wasn't mine. It couldn't be. This is fake, I said. I didn't sign anything. That's not my handwriting. He shrugged, unimpressed. It's legal, miss. You'll need to take that up with the seller. I stepped closer, shaking. And who was that? Gary Morrison, he said. Said he was family. Said you agreed to let him handle the sale. I felt my stomach drop. The rain picked up, pattering on the tin roof like static. My hands curled into fists. You need to stop moving my things now. The man sighed. Look, I don't want trouble. Paid cash. It's my property. Not yet, I snapped. You've been conned. He gave a tight smile. Then you can deal with the police. But if I were you, I'd leave before it gets dark. Locals said he might come back tonight to finish clearing it. The mention of Gary's return made my skin crawl. I looked past him, through the window, at the flickering glow of my mother's old fireplace. Someone had already stripped her quilts, taken her photo frames, boxed up every piece of her life. The man turned away, shouting orders to his crew. Load the kitchen next. My throat tightened. Don't touch that, I said quietly. Those are my mother's things. He didn't even turn around. I stormed back to my car, slammed the door, and sat there gripping the wheel until my knuckles went white. The wipers dragged across glass, matching the rhythm of my breath. That's when I noticed a figure watching me from the neighboring cabin, an older woman in a raincoat. She raised a hand, gesturing me closer. I stepped out, walked over through the drizzle. Her eyes were sharp, tired. She leaned in and whispered, "You're not the first one he's done this to." Froze. What do you mean? She glanced nervously toward the trucks. Your stepfather's been selling other people's property too. Some never got them back. My stomach knotted. Do you have proof? Her expression darkened. I have more than proof, she said, lowering her voice. I have a ledger. Her name was Margaret Klein, but everyone called her Maggie. She'd lived in the mountains longer than anyone else. Her cabin sat just down the ridge from mine, surrounded by birch trees and silence. She led me inside without a word. The air smelled of coffee and wood smoke. Faded photos of her late husband lined the walls. Sit, she said, setting down 2 mugs. You should know what kind of man your stepfather really is. I nodded, my heart pounding. She disappeared into the back room and returned with a dusty metal box. She placed it between us like a confession. Found this after Gary skipped town last winter. He used my husband's name to sign over a storage unit. When I opened it, I found this. Inside the box were ledgers, thick, handwritten books filled with names, dollar amounts and dates. I flipped one open. Every page listed fake property transactions. Some were crossed out with red ink, labeled paid or settled. Others had notes beside them: owes interest, sell land, collateral, cabin, Sloan. Name. My mother's property. Maggie leaned forward. He's been doing this for years. Gambling debts, fake deeds, blackmail. He'd promised to help people pay taxes, then forge paperwork and sell their homes out from under them. My stomach twisted. Why didn't anyone stop him? Because no one had proof until now. She pushed the ledger toward me. You do. The reality sank in. This wasn't one betrayal. It was a lifetime of them. I left her cabin with the ledger under my arm. Rain pouring again. Night closing in around the mountain. My phone buzzed, Gary calling. I didn't answer. Instead, I drove to his old house. The garage door was half open. Inside, the smell of stale beer and gasoline hit me. I flicked on my phone flashlight. Stacks of old boxes lined the walls labeled tools, bills, junk. In one corner, a wooden chest sat under a tarp. I opened it and froze. More ledgers. Dozens. And then something else. A sealed envelope with my name scrawled across the front in my mother's handwriting. For Sloane, if anything happens to me. I sank to my knees. My pulse thundered. I could still hear her voice from years ago. Keep the cabin safe, sweetheart. It's more than wood. It's your backbone. My fingers shook as I tore the envelope open. Inside was a handwritten letter, dated 3 months before she died. If you're reading this, it means Gary's hands have reached further than I hoped. I left instructions with my lawyer. The cabin is yours, Sloane. Fully, legally, and permanently. No signature, not even mine, can take that away. Trust no one who claims otherwise. Tears blurred the ink. She'd known. She'd known what kind of man he was, and she'd protected me in silence. I folded the letter, clutching it to my chest. Then my phone buzzed again. Another message from Gary. Stop what you're doing, Sloane. You have no idea who you're messing with. I looked around the dark garage surrounded by the evidence of his fraud and whispered, Oh, I know exactly who I'm messing with. I barely slept that night. The letter stayed under my pillow like a shield. By morning my decision was clear. I was done being afraid. I drove straight to Harper and Ellis Law, the firm that handled my mother's estate. Her old lawyer, Mr. Ellis, looked older now. His once black hair faded silver. But when I showed him the letter, his eyes sharpened with recognition. I remember this clause, he murmured. Your mother insisted on it. She didn't trust your stepfather. Smart woman. He typed something into his computer, brows furrowed. There's a legal protection built into her will. The cabin's deed can't be transferred without written consent from the beneficiary. That's you. So the sale isn't valid. Yes. He smiled faintly. Not even close. Whoever bought it owns heir. The cabin still belongs to you. Relief hit like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. But it didn't last. Be careful, he added quietly. If Gary forged your signature, that's felony fraud. And if he's desperate, he won't stop. He nodded. Then I won't either. That night, I returned to Maggie's cabin with copies of the ledgers and Mom's letter. We went through each page until our eyes blurred. The same names kept appearing. Debt collectors, shady buyers, fake notaries. He's not just a gambler, Maggie muttered. He's connected. The weight of her words settled on my shoulders. Later, as I walked back to my truck, headlights flashed across the woods. Car idled down the road. Could feel eyes on me. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Answered. Hello. A man's voice. Deep, unfamiliar. You should stop digging, Sloane. You're in over your head. Blick. I turned in every direction, heart hammering, but the car was already gone. The next morning my office voicemail had a message. From Gary. You think you're smarter than me. You're not. Keep pushing and I'll make sure you regret it. I saved the message, backed up the ledgers, and filed a report with the sheriff. But the fear crept in anyway, the kind that makes your skin buzz at every sound. That night, I woke to the smell of gasoline. I ran to the window. My truck's tires were slashed, and a note sat under the wiper. Stay quiet, or next time it's fire. I stared at the words until the ink bled in the rain. They thought fear would silence me. But fear was the only thing keeping me focused. The sheriff filed a report but admitted, without proof, there's not much we can do. Proof. That word haunted me. I had ledgers, letters, threats, but not enough to tie it all together. Not yet. 2 days later, my neighbor Maggie called, whispering through the phone. They've been asking around about you. 2 men. Said they were friends of Gary's. My stomach dropped. When? This morning. They were driving a black pickup, no plates. I looked out the window. The same truck idled at the end of my street. I packed a bag, grabbed the files, and drove straight to the city. Nathan, the lawyer who'd helped me once before, owed me a favor. He scanned the ledgers in silence, then whistled. This isn't small, Sloane. This is organized crime. I leaned forward. Can we use it? If you're willing to testify, he said. But it'll put you in danger. I laughed bitterly. I already am. That night I got a voicemail from Gary. His tone was dark, mocking. You think you're a hero. You're just a scared little girl with her mommy's letter. Back off, or next time you won't wake up in that pretty bed. My blood ran cold. But the fear turned into something sharper. Focus. The next day I went to the sheriff again, this time with Nathan's legal support. The sheriff's eyes widened as he read the files. We'll need more, but this could open a full investigation. That evening I drove back to the mountain, determined to retrieve security footage from the road cameras near the cabin. Maggie insisted on coming. You shouldn't go alone, she said, her voice steady but her hands trembling. The forest was quiet, unnaturally so. As we parked near the cabin, Maggie froze. Someone's been here. The front door hung open. Inside, the place was trashed. Papers scattered, furniture overturned, and on the wall, scrawled in red spray paint. You were warned. I took a shaky breath. They're desperate. Maggie nodded grimly. Then they're close to losing. I found the small safe under the floorboards, the one my mother had hidden. Inside, wrapped in plastic, was an old USB drive. I slipped it into my bag. Outside, headlights flashed again. A figure stepped from the shadows. Tall, familiar. Gary. He grinned, hands raised mockingly. You really don't know when to quit, do you, kiddo? I held up my phone, camera recording. Say that again. His smile faded. You think anyone's gonna believe you over me? Behind him, Maggie quietly raised her phone, recording too. You'd be surprised, I said. He turned and stormed off into the woods, muttering threats. I didn't follow. Because I didn't need to chase him anymore. I just needed to expose him. The next morning I reviewed the files on the USB. What I found chilled me to the bone. Audio recordings of Gary's meetings with his gambling partners. Names, dates, cash amounts, and deals involving stolen land. But one recording stood out. If this blows up, Gary said, his voice thick with arrogance, I'll pin it on Sloane. She's got the signature, she's got the motive. He was planning to frame me. That afternoon I got a call from an unknown number. A woman's voice, low and trembling. You don't know me, but my name's June. I used to work with Gary. My breath caught. Work with him how? Silence. Then. Let's just say I know what he's capable of. And I have evidence. But I need protection. We met in a diner 2 towns over. June was thin, nervous, her hands shaking around a cup of coffee. He used me, she whispered. Made me notarize fake documents, forge names. But I kept copies. He doesn't know that. She slid me a small folder under the table. Everything's in there. Inside were photocopies of deeds, including my mother's cabin, with Gary's forged stamps. This is it, I breathed. This proves everything. June nodded weakly. But once he finds out, he'll come for both of us. I promised to get her witness protection through Nathan's contacts. We left separately. The next morning, June didn't show up to our meeting. Her phone went straight to voicemail. Hours later, police found her car abandoned by the mountain road. Driver's door open, engine still running, and her purse empty. I stared at the news article, my stomach twisting. He got to her, I whispered. Maggie gripped my hand. Then we finish this. For her. That night, I returned to the cabin one last time, to set a trap. I planted motion cameras, turned on the recorder, and waited in the dark. The forest was silent except for the wind through the trees. Then I heard footsteps. Male voices. Angry. One of them unmistakably his. Gary. He stepped into the clearing, arguing with 2 men. She's got proof. We need to burn everything. A flash of lightning illuminated his face. And then a gunshot. The sound tore through the night. The echo of that gunshot froze the world. For a moment, I couldn't tell who'd fired. The sound ricocheted off the trees, swallowed by the wind. Then voices. Shouting. Arguing. I crouched behind a fallen log, clutching my phone. The night vision camera blinked red, capturing everything. "Are you insane?" one man barked. Gary's voice followed, panicked. "He had a gun, he was gonna shoot first." Another man growled. "You just made it worse. We need to move the body." My heart hammered. There'd been a shooting. Someone was down. Through the branches, I saw a figure slumped against the fire pit stones, one of Gary's debt partners. Blood pooled beneath him. Gary's hands shook as he wiped the gun clean with a rag. The camera caught everything. I texted Maggie silently. "Call the sheriff. Now." Minutes felt like hours. I could hear their boots crunching leaves, their frantic whispers. My hands were slick with sweat, but I didn't move. Then headlights appeared down the hill, a sheriff's truck. Gary's head snapped toward the road. "Someone called them," one of the men hissed. Gary cursed under his breath. "Hide the ledgers. Burn the car." They scattered, but the flashing blue lights flooded the woods before they could run. Officers shouted commands, guns drawn. "Hands where we can see them." Gary froze, dropping the rag. For once, his arrogance evaporated. He looked small. They found the weapon, the body, the fake documents, and eventually the footage from my cameras. When the sheriff approached me, I was still trembling. "Ma'am, are you all right?" I nodded numbly. "I have everything. All of it." He took the USB drive from my shaking hand. "You just helped us shut down a major fraud ring." I stared past him at Gary, being shoved into the back of a cruiser. His eyes met mine, wild and cold. He mouthed one word: "Traitor." But I didn't feel like a traitor. Felt free. The trial made headlines for weeks. Mountain man behind multi-state property scam. Stepdaughter's hidden footage brings down con artist. I sat through every hearing. Gary wouldn't look at me. His lawyer tried to paint him as an addict, a man in over his head. But the evidence was irrefutable. Ledgers, bank transfers, voice recordings, and that night's footage. The judge's gavel came down like thunder. Gary Morrison, guilty on all counts. Sentenced to 20 years without parole. It was over. Outside the courthouse, the air smelled like rain. Reporters shouted questions. "Sloan, how does it feel to see justice served?" I just said, "It's not about revenge. It's about peace." Still, peace didn't come easily. That night I drove back to the cabin. The police had sealed it for evidence, but the sheriff allowed me one visit before it was released. Inside, ashes still marked the floor from where Gary tried to burn records. I knelt beside them, touching the cold stone. "This is over, Mom," I whispered. "He can't hurt us anymore." When I left, I looked back one last time, the cabin's silhouette against the rising moon. For the first time, it didn't feel haunted. Felt mine. A week later, Nathan called. "Good news. The court restored full property rights to you. And one more thing, the cabin's clear of all liens. It's officially yours." I laughed softly. Finally. But just as I started to breathe again, the mail arrived. A plain envelope, no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "You may have won, Sloan. But I'll still haunt you. Gary." My hands shook as I tore it in half. He could rot in prison, but I wouldn't give him another second of power. The trial made headlines for weeks. Mountain man behind multi-state property scam. Stepdaughter's hidden footage brings down con artist. I sat through every hearing. Gary wouldn't look at me. His lawyer tried to paint him as an addict, a man in over his head. But the evidence was irrefutable. Ledgers, bank transfers, voice recordings, and that night's footage. The judge's gavel came down like thunder. Gary Morrison, guilty on all counts. Sentenced to 20 years without parole. It was over. Outside the courthouse, the air smelled like rain. Reporters shouted questions. "Sloan, how does it feel to see justice served?" I just said, "It's not about revenge. It's about peace." Still, peace didn't come easily. That night I drove back to the cabin. The police had sealed it for evidence, but the sheriff allowed me one visit before it was released. Inside, ashes still marked the floor from where Gary tried to burn records. I knelt beside them, touching the cold stone. "This is over, Mom," I whispered. "He can't hurt us anymore." When I left, I looked back one last time, the cabin's silhouette against the rising moon. For the first time, it didn't feel haunted. Felt mine. A week later, Nathan called. "Good news. The court restored full property rights to you. And one more thing, the cabin's clear of all liens. It's officially yours." I laughed softly. Finally. But just as I started to breathe again, the mail arrived. A plain envelope, no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "You may have won, Sloan. But I'll still haunt you. Gary." My hands shook as I tore it in half. He could rot in prison, but I wouldn't give him another second of power. Cliffhanger next, Part 9. Reclaiming the Mountain. I visited him once. Not for closure, just curiosity. The prison was cold, fluorescent, reeking of bleach and defeat. Gary looked smaller, older, a shadow of his former swagger. He grinned when he saw me. "You came to gloat." "No," I said. "To thank you." His brows furrowed. "For what?" "For finishing what Mom started." I handed him the newspaper. The headline read, "Marlene's Rest Opens as Women's Recovery Retreat." His face paled. "You took her dream and tried to bury it in greed," I said softly. "But now her name will live longer than yours ever will." He sneered. "Enjoy it while it lasts, kiddo. Everyone loses eventually." Smiled. "Maybe. But not today." I stood to leave, and his voice cracked behind me. "You're just like her." "Stop." "No," I said, turning. "I'm what she hoped I'd become." Outside, sunlight spilled through the gates. That evening I returned to the cabin. The mountains were painted gold. The air smelled of pine and peace. I lit a fire, sat in the same rocking chair my mother built, and whispered, "We did it." The flames crackled softly, almost like she was answering. I took the last remaining piece of Gary's final letter and tossed it into the fire. It curled and vanished into smoke. Justice didn't roar that night. It whispered. And for me that was enough. If someone ever tried to take what your heart built, remember, rebuilding is the loudest revenge. Comment still standing. If you'd rise again no matter who betrayed you. Like and subscribe for more cinematic real-life stories.